Picture 50 metric tons of raw palm oil sitting at a facility in Jakarta, Indonesia. This massive shipment is boxed up, loaded onto a fleet of trucks, and ready to go. The buyer waiting for this oil is thousands of miles away in Delhi, India. But getting it there poses a massive physical problem. There is no single, unbroken road, rail, or shipping lane connecting these two cities. This map shows the exact route the cargo has to endure. It must survive 5 distinct legs of transit: a truck ride to an Indonesian port, sea freight across the ocean to Chennai, another truck to an Indian airport, an air cargo flight to Delhi, and finally, one last truck to the buyer's warehouse. Traditionally, a seller moving this oil would have to negotiate 5 separate contracts with 5 completely disconnected transportation companies to cover each leg of the trip. That approach requires a mountain of paperwork. Every single handoff demands new shipping documents, independent fees, and aggressive coordination. The administrative costs alone eat directly into the profit margins of the trade. But the real risk is legal. If those containers arrive in Delhi dented and leaking oil, you are stuck trying to figure out which of the 5 carriers caused the damage. Naturally, they will all blame each other. You simply cannot scale international trade on a fragile system of disconnected agreements. Moving modern cargo across oceans and continents requires a unified legal framework to survive the trip. In India, that framework is provided by the Multimodal Transportation of Goods Act of 1993. It introduced a tool called the Multimodal Transport Document, or MTD. Instead of juggling multiple bills of lading and individual carrier agreements, the seller signs exactly one continuous contract that legally covers the entire transit from Jakarta to Delhi. That single document is managed by a multimodal transport operator, or MTO, a specific legal entity that takes full responsibility for the entire shipment. This diagram illustrates the MTO sitting in the center of the operation, acting as a conductor. The MTO signs the main agreement with the seller, and then independently works in the background, hiring the trucks, planes, and ships. The buyer and seller never have to manage the individual carriers. The 1993 Act is strict about who gets to play this role. An operator must be officially registered and approved by a competent government authority before they can legally issue an MTD. Because the legal details are centralized, the physical movement becomes highly efficient. At massive transit hubs like the port of Tanjung Priok, cargo smoothly transfers from truck to ship without the need to stop and renegotiate terms. The multimodal transport document turns a fragmented logistical mess into a single, legally binding VIP pass. The cargo keeps moving and the paperwork stays organized, but let's look at the worst-case scenario. What happens if that 50 tons of palm oil arrives ruined, but no one knows exactly where the damage occurred? This is known in trade law as non-localized damage. Under standard individual contracts, the buyer would be completely stuck, unable to prove which specific carrier to sue for compensation. With an MTD, the buyer doesn't have to play detective. The multimodal transport operator bears a single point of liability for the entire door-to-door journey. If the cargo is damaged at any point, the MTO is legally responsible for the claim. This simplified liability structure is highly effective when executing common international trade agreements, particularly CIF contracts. This visual checklist outlines CIF terms, which stand for cost, insurance, and freight. Under these rules, the seller must arrange the transport, buy insurance, and hand over the shipping documents to the buyer. The MTD checks all these boxes perfectly, serving as a single, comprehensive document of title. By centralizing liability and streamlining the documentation into one file, the MTD legally shields buyers and sellers from the physical risks inherent in global transit. Which brings us back to our palm oil. After traveling by truck, ship, and plane, the cargo begins its final physical leg down an Indian highway, heading for the buyer's warehouse. The truck backs up to the loading dock. The 50 tons of oil arrive intact. There is no scramble to coordinate 5 sets of invoices, and the buyer simply provides a single signature to take possession. The multimodal transport framework clearly defines liability, reduces paperwork, and lowers administrative costs for everyone. Transporting massive quantities of goods across the planet is a heavy physical task. But it's the elegant legal structure operating quietly in the background making this global movement possible.